The main character saw the world he wanted when he closed his eyes. A young girl with long black hair is sitting on a donkey. Her hands are folded in her lap, her chest is tied with bandages, and she is wearing a kimono tied with a rope at the waist. With a smile, she looks into the distance. There are huge expanses around it, in the distance, mountains covered in snow. And all around her ears of corn grow. White clouds float across the sky. Her hair is tied in a high ponytail, tied with what looks like a string. From calm, quiet days to hard, brutal battles. The huge dragon opened its mouth. Opposite him was a warrior armed with a pitchfork that oozed blue energy. He was riding a smaller dragon with a golden hide and an open mouth. The man himself was powerfully built, with long flowing dark hair and a military uniform, ready to attack the monster. Their slaughter was taking place high in the sky, which was covered with dark, thick clouds. It was a dream that he had been having for 17 years. A multi-story building with a small store inside. Outside this store there is a chair, several chairs near them there is a vending machine. Number 22 is hanging on the house itself. A young man with dark eyes and short black hair, dressed in a work uniform, was punching the buyer's goods. It was a small yellow jar with a green lid. The guy's name was Kang Sol, and he was 25 years old. The only option for an orphan from an orphanage without an education is to work part-time in a convenience store. A man stands behind the cash register and serves two young guys. They talk to each other. One of them was a dark-haired man with short hair, wearing a red t-shirt and a beige sweater with a smile looking at his friend. The man next to him was wearing a black sweater with a short haircut and dyed blonde hair on top of his head. Behind the main character was a showcase with many different products. As Kang Sol punched through the customers' goods and put them in a bag, the two men had their own conversation. A man with dyed hair asked his friend with a smile, "Is it true that he is dating her?" His friend told him not to talk nonsense with the same smile on his face. The sullen, taciturn guy just repeats his daily routine. Kang Sol didn't look interested in their conversation as he continued to put the goods in the bag. His gaze was directed downwards, and his face showed nothing but indifference. But there is one thing that sets it apart from the rest. The fact that he sees one of the same dreams every day. There was a huge table in the center of the room, and several people were gathered around it. For 17 years in a row, it was already dark, and there was a sign outside the brick building that read Soan Dorm. Kang Sol was lying on the bed. He was sprawled out in 4 directions, looking up at the ceiling. One arm was hanging off the bed. He was wearing black pants and a light-colored shirt that was partially unbuttoned. On his bed there was nothing but one pillow, a mattress, and a blanket laid on top. The young man was lying on top of the blanket. He barely made it to the end of his shift. This news might frighten anyone, but for him, who lives in a small room and does not have a normal job, dreams are the only chance to escape. It was already dark outside the building. A street lamp illuminated the street. The young man took a deep breath as he continued to stare at the ceiling. The first time this happened was when he was still living in an orphanage. Little Kang Sol was sitting somewhere that looked like a heavenly space. It was surrounded by light clouds, and behind it was a cosmic sky where many stars shone. He couldn't figure out where he was. In the distance, he saw what looked like a bright star. He found himself in an unknown dimension in which there was an amazing building. The little boy found himself in front of a huge castle. Its doors were closed, and light blue lights glowed on the peaks of the castle. The castle was also surrounded by clouds, being in the sky space, and he walked over there like he was possessed by something. A small boy stood in front of the doors as they opened in front of them at the same time. Air rushed in immediately. A young girl with short blonde hair appeared in front of him, wearing a mask that looked like a fox's face. She had a friendly smile on her face. Her hands were folded, and she was dressed in a suit, pants, shirt, and cape. She greeted him and told him to come inside. He was met by a stranger in a fox mask, who showed the way to a large banquet hall. Everyone present there wore masks. The girl stopped at a huge table with chairs around it and a person sitting on each of them. Above the table, what looked like huge constellations erupted. One of the young men sitting at table 1, wearing a mask with a long sharp beak, folded his hands. He said it was time to roll the dice. They were playing a game. There were cheers everywhere about how much they adored her. Someone asked to choose their own pieces. Another person replied that they would take the same one, Red Butcher. Another one person followed the conversation, saying that he would again play for the Wind Ranger. People continued to sit at the table, watching their conversation. The fox-masked girl interrupted them, apologizing and introducing the new member. In the dream, Kang Sol suddenly became an adult. He was wearing clothes that he had never seen before, and he had a mask on his face. The man was dressed in a black suit, a black coat on top, and on his head was a dark hat trimmed with a red ribbon. He doesn't understand why he was dressed like this, and his body and voice have grown up. At the table, another stranger with dark skin and bright red hair replied that they had made a new friend, inviting him to sit in the designated seat. On the face of this man was a mask with horns, and on it flaunted a bright orange lightning bolt. He was wearing a light suit and red tie, and his hands were covered in dark brown gloves. It was definitely a dream, but it felt real. The fox-masked girl spoke to Kang Sol. She asked them how they could address him when they were sitting down next to him. Since it wasn't real, he decided to tell them his nickname. Standing up from his chair, he bowed slightly and introduced himself as Snowman. Since then, it has become a snowman. The girl in the fox mask repeated his nickname with a smile on her face, telling him to choose the figure that he would control. Kang Sol looked somewhat puzzled. He looked at the screen that suddenly appeared in front of him. It was something similar to the menu in the game. This window was called the character creation window. There were 2 cells listed on it, and one of them had a profession to choose from: mage, hermit, summoner, berserk, guide, or plague doctor. And in the other, the attributes were specified: frost, mechanical engineering, shadow, pollution, fire, and nature. 2 columns flaunted in front of a young guy. He needed to create a character that would become his figure. Well, since this was a dream, I might as well give it a try. Kang Sol decided to take a frost attribute mage. The young man pointed curiously at the screen, choosing his profession as a magician. A character appeared in front of him. It was a mage with a pointed hat on his head and short blonde hair, wearing a cloak and suit, and holding a scepter with an ice crystal on top. A dark-skinned man with a lightning mask on his face told him that it was a very bold choice for one game. He liked it. The man clutched a fire cube in his hand. He offered to start the game. A polyhedral cube with various numbers on it fell, hitting the table. Kang Sol's first game started that day. A wide variety of characters appeared, and those present clearly enjoyed what was happening. They had long been used to it. One of the characters was a huge lizard with an evil expression. It had many sharp spikes on it, and it was dressed in armor. His eyes swam red. It was their opponent standing menacingly in front of them. Kang Sol's character was standing next to another character. It was a knight wearing armor and a helmet on his head. The knight held out a huge sword in front of him. Both of them were standing in front of a vicious huge lizard. The game soon came to an end. Another unknown man sitting at the table was wearing a jester's mask. He had dark green hair and a long, thick mustache. He was dressed in a red and green suit with a bow tied around his neck. He said they might as well be killed. Pointing his finger at the character board, he noted that it was now Kang Sol's turn. He urged him on, told him to roll his dice faster. The young man's expression was focused. He frowned slightly and pursed his lips. In his hand was a white cube with numbers on its sides. Opening his hand, he dropped the cube on the table. He needed to drop it and make a choice. The next answer board appeared in front of him. In total, 4 options were provided for how he could proceed. He could run away, set up a smoke screen, bind the legs of Sharpthorn with frost magic, or try to convince with words. He was given 39 seconds to choose one of the options. After thinking about it, Kang Sol decided to choose 3 options and bind their opponent's legs with frost magic. As soon as he selected the option he needed, the screen disappeared. Kang Sol's character began to cast a spell. He raised his scepter, slamming it hard on the ground. At the contact of the sharp tip of the scepter and the ground, a bright light began to radiate. The frost mage held the scepter while standing up slightly in the air. A snowflake pattern emerged from the point of contact. Sharp ice peaks immediately shot out from it. This caused the ground to open up. Those watching Kang Sol praised it, saying that it was a great choice. The huge lizardman was thrown back by the frost mage's spell, hitting it with ice spikes. It opened its mouth wide and screamed. Kang Sol was glad that magic was so easy to use. A man in a raven mask with a sharp beak threw a die after him. He told them to leave the rest to him. The man threw a faceted cube and shouted, "Go ahead." The character in the form of a knight immediately charged forward at the lizard, cutting it down with his long sword. The monster was thrown aside, and he screamed. With a loud crash, he fell face first to the ground. You could just see the spikes sticking out of his back. After finishing the blow, the knight turned his back to the monster with his sword at the edge. The guys at the table cheered that they had finally managed to defeat him. They were very happy about it. A new sign appeared on the screen again, stating that the Thornbill chieftain has been defeated and the adventure is over. The girl in the fox mask turned to the boys with the same smile and said that today's adventure was over. She asked if everyone had enjoyed the world of eternity. The main character was delighted with the game. He slightly opened his mouth, looking at the others. This game was amazing. The fate of the piece depends on the luck of the strategy and choice. He has never played this before, and not only that, there are countless professions and attributes, which gives even more variations. The people sitting at the table slowly started to get up. The man in the raven mask added that he could not believe that the trial game was so interesting. The dark-skinned man sitting across from him smiled at his words. The raven-masked man asked Kang Sol if he would join them tomorrow. Kang Sol was a little taken aback, not immediately knowing what to say. Kang Sol believed that there was no point in seriously considering a normal dream, no matter where they were or who these people in front of him were. Kang Sol looked happily through his mask at the kids, a bright smile on his face. He replied that of course he would join them because it was fun. Since then, he and a group of strangers have enjoyed the world of eternity every night. Well, no one believed him, of course. Multi-story building, fenced with a gate. It was daylight outside. Next to the gate was a wooden sign that read shelter. The little boy was asked if he was completely crazy already. There was a picture of little Kang Sol on the blackboard with another set of children. A small boy with dark black hair and dark brown eyes wearing a green t-shirt with a yellow collar. Under his picture was a sign with his name on it. The person talking to him kept asking him how this was possible. One and the same dream every night in which he plays a game with other people. Talking to the guy were two other little kids from the shelter, a skinny boy with brown hair and a boy in a blue t-shirt and brown shorts. They couldn't believe what Kang Sol was telling them. A skinny boy told another boy not to play with him. He wasn't far away from him, turning around and looking at him in disbelief. Kang Sol held out his hand to them, though, so that they wouldn't walk away from him. He told his friends from the shelter everything, but no one believed him. Little Kang Sol slowly raised his hand. He was extremely upset by their reactions, looking at them in bewilderment and not believing that no one believed him. It was only a matter of time before he became a loner who would be labeled a liar for saying impossible things, so he couldn't adapt to the shelter and didn't talk much. Kang Sol hung his head, upset and downcast. His face was grim, and the dreams continued. Already an adult guy, still lying on the bed, looking at the ceiling. He talked about taking a shower and getting his things ready for tomorrow, but he didn't even have the energy to get out of bed. He didn't care if people believed him or not. After all, that place will be his personal refuge. Closing his eyes, he took a deep breath, and today he fell asleep without any problems. Once again in the same dimension in front of a huge castle with burning torches on its peaks, the guy stood in front of the doors. He was wearing the same suit and the same mask, and his hands were in the pockets of his raincoat. The guys he already knew met him by opening the doors. It was a man in a raven mask with a sharp nose and a girl in a fox mask. The man told him that he was waiting for him. The girl greeted him by holding the door open and saying welcomito him. The three of them walked to the center of the room and sat down at the table. Kang Sol sat down at his usual seat. A man wearing a raven mask stood to his right, and a girl wearing a fox mask stood to his left, asking him, will he play with them today? To the left of the girl was a man in a jester's mask. In response to the girl's words, the man in the raven mask said what she could even talk about, because, of course, he would spend the last day with them. The only place Kang Sol liked to be. Of course, over the past 17 years, he had thought many times about who these people were and even suggested that they might be gods. Standing in the middle is a girl wearing a fox mask, a raven mask, a closed mask with a slit for one eye, a mask with lightning and horns, and a clown mask. Kang Sol was afraid that the dream magic might break if he tried to find out their secrets. The guys started arguing about which of them he would play with. Some started saying that he would play with them, others argued with them and said that they would not give him up. Kang Sol smiled at their cute exchanges. It was obvious that he was happy. He just rolled the dice and laughed with the others. Such a small thing became a whole world for him. Enjoying the game is the most important part of his life. Suddenly, their conversations and thoughts about the future were interrupted by a sudden cry. He demanded to stop everything immediately. The dark-skinned man in the lightning mask and the man in the raven mask stood side by side and added that Kang Sol would play one this time because he didn't finish the last adventure of the great sage. A man with a large mustache and a shield mask confirmed that he would probably have to retreat. Kang Sol was smiling at the kids. The raven-masked man continued that the figures had been wonderful before, but they had never made it to Ascension. Clenching his hand into a fist, the man continued. He suggested that the guys try one last time properly. The Ascension, the word speaks for itself. This is the road to heaven, the last adventure in the world of eternity. A stone staircase hanging in the sky led endlessly into the sky. This stage was the end of the game. He played with them for 17 years, and during that time created several legendary characters. A man with a sword and dark hair, a man with long black hair and a red robe, a smiling man with blonde hair and a fluffy cape, a man with long blonde hair and a white robe, and a smiling man with dark black hair appeared in front of the guy. Because of this, he, Kang Sol, the snowman who almost reached the top, was considered by many to be his idol. But like everything else in life, the world of eternity has also come to an end. They were notified that the trial version of the game would be completed today and the official release would start soon, so he might not be able to play with them anymore. In the center of the room was an empty table with 6 chairs. Kang Sol was a little upset, thinking that they probably had a better understanding of what all this meant. Interrupting his thoughts, The Raven-masked man told Tom to try to reach Ascension together since it was the last day. Despite everything, he was sad to part with the game, the rules of which he had memorized like crazy, and if he had been given more time, he would definitely have created a unique 31st figure. A huge chess piece appeared on the table, glowing with fire, a final creation that captures the progress and knowledge of all the years. The girl in the fox mask started telling them not to get upset because the trial version would end soon. After all, tomorrow the official release will begin, and their dreams will finally become reality. The girl held out her hand with a smile on her face. The man in the lightning mask started waving his hand slightly casually, saying that they were even slightly delayed. They should get their divinity back. They must take revenge on the insects that made them this way. The man across from him laughed, noting that he only seemed interested in the second half of the game. Kang Sol didn't quite understand what was being said. What are divinity and insects? There was a slight puzzlement on his face as he watched the two people conversing. They often discussed strange things, but what was that supposed to mean? Kang Sol took the dice in his fist and started shaking them, throwing them on the table. This wasn't the time to think about it. He had to concentrate and try to get Ascension. In 17 years, only 9 out of 30 figures have reached this stage. The stone stairway that soared in the sky and led endlessly upward stretched higher and higher. A man was standing in front of it, slowly walking up it. He was wearing a cassock, his hair was flowing, and in his hands was a stick on which he leaned. This was his last chance. The faceted bone fell. Everything depended on this throw. The number 1 fell on the dice. A sign appeared in the background, which said that there was an explosion of mana in the process of ascension. Milan was hit by a magic recoil. A man walking up the stairs suddenly began to pull down. He struggled to climb further up, and in the next instant, he tripped and fell straight down. Kang Sol screamed. His character Milan failed ascension. A girl in a fox mask and a man in a raven mask standing on either side of the main character took him by the shoulders. The girl put her hand on the guy's shoulder. They started talking about how it was a failure and the 10th attempt ended like this. He was out of luck. Kang Sol's face showed shock. He opened his eyes wide and pressed his lips together tightly. He didn't say anything. Gritting his teeth, he just said again. A sign flashed in front of his eyes that said, "Does he want to stop Milan's adventures?" There were 2 possible answers. In one line in the red frame was the answer yes, below was the answer no, framed by a blue frame. Of course, it was difficult for a person to get to heaven, but he missed the last chance, drowning Milan with a broken stick. It lay on top of the water, waiting for its creator's decision. Did he want to continue his adventures? Looking down at the image of his character, the guy stretched out his finger and pressed the answer yes. A sign flashed up, saying that the fate of Milan is now in his hands. The adventure is over, but life goes on. The guys came up to him. I try to comfort the main character from behind. A man in a mask stood up. Lightning. A girl in a fox mask put her hand on his shoulder. I try to comfort him. The man in the back started talking about how they had done their best and even got a chance to ascend. The man in the raven mask picked him up, saying that Kang Sol was the only one who did it. But it wasn't much consolation to him. He sat hunched over and lowered his head, hoping that he would be able to break through at least at the end. In the center of the hall, the game ended. The table and chairs were empty, and no one was sitting on them. Kang Sol turned his back to the hall. Get out of here. His luck ran out, but it was fun. And so ended the world of eternity that he had enjoyed for 17 years. But no, an unexpected bright flash appeared in the sky. Kang Sol was once again in the middle of the clouds. There was surprise on his face, and his eyes were wide. He was sitting in an empty space, surrounded by white clouds. He thought it was over. Suddenly, a voice announced that the main character had finally appeared. There was a bright flash behind the guy. He didn't know what was going on. His mouth was slightly open, and his eyes were wide. The man was already an adult, unlike last time. He was wearing a dark gray hoodie and casual black pants. Abruptly, he spun around as the doors swung open in front of him. In front of him were already old acquaintances, and behind them were many other people whom he had not met before. Their faces were filled with disapproval and anger, and the man in the lightning mask said that this was an insect that was deceiving everyone and pretending to be a god. The man was flanked by a girl wearing a fox mask and a man wearing a closed mask with blue hair. Now he was a piece on the board. A vast expanse of sky with a star shining brightly in the middle of it. Didn't the world of eternity end yesterday? He thought that he would never dream like this again, and why this place again? Noticing him, the guys turned to him, saying that the main character finally appeared. The already familiar faces in front of him didn't look too friendly. A red-haired man wearing a lightning mask pointed a finger in his direction, ordering him to be captured immediately. At the same time, a bright iron gold ring appeared on the boy's neck, coiling around it. It electrocuted him with great force. The boy's eyes lit up yellow, he shuddered, and his mouth opened wide in a scream. The veins in his face bulged. From such a strong blow, the guy bent at the knees, trying to catch his breath. He was breathing deeply from his mouth, saliva dripping, and tears were dripping from his eyes. He couldn't understand the sudden outburst on their part. His neck felt like it was on fire. The boys continued to discuss the man, talking about where he came from in the first place, what a disgusting person he was, who opened the way for him. They kept insulting him, calling him vile, not believing what he was saying to him. He had dared to deceive the gods themselves, and he had to be killed, as others were doing while the man was staining the heavens. They lined up in front of the castle entrance while King Saul lay under their feet, trying to catch his breath. He was on all fours on the ground. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. His eyes flew open. He wondered what they had just said. In the next second, the collar around his neck activated again, sending out a jolt of electricity. The boy paled, gritting his teeth. His pupils narrowed. He clutched at the collar with his hands. The man with the lightning mask extended his hand towards King Saul, continuing to torture him with his lightning bolts. He threatened him that the guy would meet his end here. Bright yellow lightning flickered from the outstretched hand. Behind him, the fox-masked girl and the masked man stared in silence, not saying a word. King Saul wondered if this was where he would meet his end. Gritting his teeth, he furrowed his brows. Sweat dripped from his face. He continued to hold on tightly to the ring around his neck. Would his death be so pathetic? He doesn't remember agreeing to that. A man wearing a lightning mask lifted King Saul into the air. The crowd around them noticed a man enter. It was a young man with blonde hair and a burgundy suit, and an archway shone above his head. He, like everyone else, was also wearing a mask that covered half of his face. Patterns were drawn on the mask itself. His eyes shone blue. The enraged man who was torturing King Saul called him Cordon. He asked him what it was all about and that King Saul had insulted every single one of us. Cordon spread his hands cheerfully with a smile on his face, smiling back and walking closer to the crowd. He asked everyone to calm down, surprised at how much this made everyone angry. Noticing the man, King Saul shifted his gaze to him. He remembered seeing it before. He often appeared in the world of eternity. Did he really want to help him? He was one of the most influential players. Sighing and closing his eyes, Cordon asked the gods if they really wanted to shed human blood in heaven, or if they were going to drag dirt into their beds. The man added that it would be better to send him back to where he came from. The crowd gaped at Cordon's suggestion. They didn't know if it made any sense at all. Cordon raised his index finger and waved it from side to side, then closed one eye. With a slight smile on his face, he added that of course they wouldn't let him go so easily, because it was definitely his fault. A bright blue fire radiates from the man. After asking the crowd if they remembered what day it was, the crowd turned to look at him with a puzzled expression. The fox-masked girl pointed her finger at Cordon and exclaimed that today was harvest day. The man smiled at the girl's words. The man standing next to her agreed that in that case, he should have been sent back. With a smile on his face, showing his teeth, Cordon looked from under his brows. It will go back to where it should be, a land where their dreams will become reality, and die like a worm, to be sacrificed in the name of madness. King Saul looked at them in horror. What does it mean? Falling to the ground, the guy continued to hold onto the hoop around his neck. The crowd roared with laughter, saying in unison that it was impossible to stain the sky with his disgusting blood. The man in the jester's mask added, "Didn't King Saul know anything when he got here?" Next to him was a man wearing a lightning mask, and at his side was a girl with a fox mask. King Saul continued to writhe on all fours. The man pointed a finger at him, shooting lightning bolts with a satisfied smile on his face, and wished that Tom would die on the ground, and that he would not even think about looking into the eyes of the gods. King Saul realized that Cordon wasn't going to save him. He only wanted to hurt him more. Suddenly, a voice rang out in the guy's head. Someone was asking how he was. King Saul didn't immediately understand what was going on. He opened his eyes wide, looking back at the gods. It was Cordon, his voice audible only to him. King Saul looked up from under his brows and looked at him. The man was smiling and talking to the others as if nothing had happened. Cordon continued to talk to him. He told him that he knew who he was, but there was no time to explain everything, so he had to get straight to the main point. The gods standing in a separate crowd, led by Cordon, and he kneeling to one side. The world he used to live in is about to change. Today will be the unification of the worlds, his world and the world of eternity. King Saul opened his eyes in shock, gritting his teeth. Why would their worlds unite? Cordon answered his question, because the gods chose madness over faith to restore their powers. Masked people standing there stretched out their hands to the houses of the multi-story metropolis. Everything was ablaze. Their writings and history will be sold for madness. A man armed with a sword attacks an ordinary city girl. This will help restore the gods to their former powers. King Saul continued to stare at them as he conversed with the man. He asked what that meant. Cordon explained to him that there was only one way to save people, and this is to get to the final adventure, which he failed. Before ascension, Cordon glanced slightly in his direction. He told him to collect as much madness as possible, it would be useful to him. And as for the latter, it was not to touch the affairs of the heavens, otherwise the gods might interfere. King Saul continued to crouch on all fours in shock, his face showing incomprehension. He couldn't understand what kind of ascension they were talking about since they weren't in the game and how he could have done it, especially after so many failures. Corden wished him luck one last time, hoping that one day they would meet again. The man held out his hand. It began to float in the air, and a hole opened up below it, a portal to the city. With a shocked look on his face, he looked down. Corden told the god standing next to him that they would watch the worm squirm before it died. The man in the lightning mask wanted to stop him, saying that he should not be allowed in like this, but did not have time. Corden waved his hand, and the guy immediately flew down into the abyss. The gods looked down on him as he flew on. When Kang Saul disappeared, Corden turned back to the gods, everyone looking in his direction. He said it was time to start discussing the harvest of madness. When he landed on the ground, he tried to catch his breath, but he immediately grabbed his neck, feeling for the collar he was wearing. He was surprised that he had survived. Thank God everything seems to be in order. There was a dark mark on his neck from the collar. As he had suspected, they were the real gods. And they didn't just exist in his dreams, they were material. The guy looked around him, not immediately realizing where he was. It was too dark, so he couldn't see anything. A screen appeared in front of him that read, "World of Eternity is loading. 97%. He was surprised to see the name, because it was the same game from his dreams. He couldn't believe he was inside her. The next message on the screen read that the World of Eternity app was finished. World of Eternity, welcome to Pandia. He recognized the name and realized that it was a world from the game. Suddenly, a bright light appeared on the screen, which blinded the guy, and he covered his face with his hands. When the light disappeared, he squinted. Ruins appeared in front of him. Not far away was a castle, and behind it was a huge broken tower from which a bright light poured out. Standing on the edge of the precipice, he stared at the painting in front of him. He was actually inside the game. The boy's face showed surprise and shock. A sign appeared in front of him, stating that 7,900,021,232 people had joined the World of Eternity. He couldn't understand what had happened, and that several billion people had joined the world. The next second, he was in an empty space surrounded by red silhouettes. The information on the sign changed and asked to choose the attributes and his character. Soon one adventure will begin. Standing in an empty space surrounded by red silhouettes, the guy stared at the sign in front of him. He couldn't believe it, that the other humans were here, and that the worlds were truly united. All of humanity found itself in a world of eternity. He remembered Corden's words. The world he's used to living in is about to change. Today will be the unification of the worlds, is in the world of eternity. Corden had not deceived him. Kang Saul couldn't believe that the game wasn't just a dream all this time. The man buried his hands in his hair, clenching his teeth tightly. The game that he had played before was now his reality as well. He remembered how the gods had addressed him, calling him a worm and telling him not to even look them in the eye. The fact that he was looking at the world through their eyes and their gaze was so unacceptable. He clenched his hand into a fist. This worm was able to deceive them, and they did nothing but cheer him up during the game, but now they rejected him when they found out that he was a human. We decided to get rid of it so calmly. The traumatic memories he had from the orphanage were repeated with those to whom he had given his whole heart. If he deserved this just because he was born human. The guy was infuriated. He frowned and clenched his teeth tightly. At least he could afford to be angry with those who called themselves gods. Kang Saul will take advantage of the experience gained over 17 years and achieve success in many things. The guy reached out to the sign and clicked on the create button. The next screen showed that character creation was complete. He decided that he would become a unique 31 figures and get to them. There was determination in the boy's eyes. He held out his hand and a bright light came on. He became a shadow summoner named Snowman. The World of Eternity is no different from board RPGs on game boards. He finished the game with 30 characters, and during this time he realized that starting attributes change a lot, as in reality everything is decided by what wealth you were born with. But now the game is becoming his world, and he can't start again. Death means the end. He remembered his drowning character Milan in the water. Therefore, he needed a character who would reach ascension without any problems. In the World of Eternity, you can select several attributes at the same time, so you can create something specific. And, of course, because of this system, there are preferred and lagging classes. In past attempts, he had relied heavily on other players, but now he was left with one. In truth, there was a combination that he never tested until after the trial period. Looking at the screen, Kang Saul decided that he would take her. Among the magic professions, he decided to choose a summoner, an attribute, shadow. For all the points of the characteristics he pumped wisdom, cooking and perception. Summoner is a very unpleasant class that deals bad damage, heals poorly, or provides support, and is nothing special in itself, but if you combine two unpopular attributes, you can get an interesting combination. The guy stretched out his hand to the screen, clicking on the confirm button. He chose the nickname Snowman. His character's attribute sign appeared on the screen, Shadow Summoner, Snowman. He moves to Pandia, the World of Eternity. Kang Saul wore a robe, a suit, and a stick in his hand. A sign appeared in front of him with the description of the quest Adventure 1, Dance of the Moonlit Night. There are many traps scattered throughout Pandy, so you will have to learn how to find them in order not to die in agony. This place is designed for practicing. You bravely set out on one adventure and reached unknown ruins. Mission: complete at least one Ruins of the Forgotten Moon challenge and earn a reward. If you fail, you will die. The remaining time is 6 minutes. Kang Sol looked up. Ruins of the Forgotten Moon. He remembered this place. The guy was standing in front of the ruins. In front of it was a stone building, and on the sides of this building were dilapidated columns. It was an adventure for beginners, which introduces the nuances of the world of eternity. But this is only at first glance, the complexity of it is inadequately high. The boy put a hand to his chin thoughtfully, looking straight ahead. He recalled that he often had to advance while constantly taking damage from the ruins of the Forgotten Moon filled with traps, and this might be a problem for him since there is no thief class or the trap immobilization skill. Plus, the Shadow Summoner is a caster who moves very slowly. A sign appeared in front of the guy with a description of his character, where the name was indicated: Snowman, class Shadow Summoner, no title, and class Human, level 1. He spent all the stat points on Wisdom. It was clear that it wasn't going to be easy. The boy leaned on a stick, ready to move forward. He even started to think that he would have chosen a different class if he had known what Adventure 1 would be like. The guy ducked slightly. Looking around, it was already a familiar scene for him. He really became a figure. During the dice rolls, he didn't think about it, but when he personally got here, he started to get nervous. When he reached the door of the building, he was in front of them. Ruins of the Forgotten Moon. There are two options for starting the interaction, a door or a lever, but he didn't know which answer was exactly correct. A sign with information appeared in front of him. He could see the options, and he wondered if it was the same for all the other people involved in the game. The sign said, the doors of the ruins are made of solid stone, and there were 4 possible answers to choose from. 1 is to open the door by force, 2 is to turn the lever to the right, 3 is to turn the lever to the left, and 4, which required perception 1, is to disable the trap on the door. You must first turn the lever. Apparently, they were going to give him hints, although he still memorized all the rules as if he had memorized an encyclopedia. Before that, he played in the trial version and thought that in the release version the choices would change. The guy carefully leaned the stick on the side of the building, looking at the lever. He was glad that at least something hadn't changed, because it meant that he would be able to pass through the ruins. Kang Sol looked a little puzzled, but he was confident in his abilities. He has been playing this game for 17 years. He wrapped his hand around the lever, remembering, first to the left, then to the right. Choosing the best options was his forte. If there were more, he wouldn't always be able to rely on his memory. He pulled a lever and the doors opened. In this situation, he had no doubts. He stood in front of the open doors, looking ahead. A long, dark corridor stretched out before him. Animal faces were painted on the flagstones on the floor. He recalled the first trial of Ruins of the Forgotten Moon. He needs to step on the tiles and move to the other side, but if he chooses the wrong one, the trap is activated. Several hundred arrows would immediately fly at him. And it wasn't a game, it was life. He was only one step away from death. Kang Sol looked down at his feet. He had tried out almost all the major talents that exist in the world of eternity, and I knew all the hidden choices that are revealed by specific options. The most important thing is his knowledge. The boy tilted his head back and looked up. The password to this riddle was written in front, but he doesn't have the talent for archaeology or theology to read it. Up ahead, above the archway of the corridor, was a sign with obscure symbols, but even so, he still remembered the rest of it. Kang Sol smiled slightly. He was looking at the animals' faces. The lion is fierce, so it is not inferior to anyone. The sheep is obedient, so the last one goes. The generous moon embraces everyone, and the wolf goes right behind the tiger. One time may seem complicated, but the point is just to step on the tiles in the correct order. The correct sequence of combinations formed in the boy's mind: lion, wolf, moon, and sheep. The guy looked and then looked at the tiles on the floor. It was simple. It is enough to repeat the sequence so as not to get hurt. The boy took another careful look at the image on the tiles, his brow furrowed. He was nervous, but still decided to go ahead, taking one step. When he stepped on the lion, next was the wolf. When he started to get things right, the guy smiled with relief. He quickly completed the task. Within seconds, he was on the other side. Turning around behind him and looking back, the guy smiled. It was easier for him. A sign appeared in front of him with new information. He passed one test of the ruins for the duration of this moon and can choose a reward. A copper chest appeared first, but since it passed the test without taking damage, the reward improved, turning the chest into an iron one. They can continue the adventure even if they don't choose a reward. Kang Sol thought about it. He could take the reward, but the reward could increase if he went further and didn't take the current one. Looking down the dark, dusty corridor, He decided that he would continue his adventure. He started up the stairs. If you are greedy and reach for the best reward, you will die. As he rounded the corner, he looked back. It wasn't a problem for him, it's an adventure he remembers very well. There was no mistaking another dark corridor. It was lit by almost nothing but torches on the walls. 2 test demonstrates the essence of the ruins of the Forgotten Moon. It was a trap that you will have to break through. Kang Sol's face took on a worried expression. Here, his memories and knowledge were useless. A question board appeared in front of him. The tiles that he could step on were red, blue, and black. The order of activating the trap was different every time, and he didn't have any talents that could unlock hidden options. Trap immobilization or mechanical engineering might help. Kang Sol glanced back at his reflection after looking at the tiles. The black stripe on his neck looked like a collar, the scar left by the god in the lightning mask. He recalled the picture of the man wearing the lightning mask reaching out to him, causing him to writhe in agony from the lightning bolts. He promised to see them again. Taking a tentative step forward, he stepped on a red tile. His face was restless, his brows furrowed, and his teeth were clenched. Who knew if he could guess the correct order? After he stepped on the tile, nothing happened. Next, he stepped on a gray tile and the trap immediately activated, attacking him. The wounded man shivered. It was getting even more interesting. While Kang Sol was passing the test, the donation screen appeared. He didn't know that he was being watched. The next step also turned out to be wrong. Another batch of traps flew in his direction. He was furious. Only ruthless scoundrels could do such a thing. Was it really necessary to make a sequence of 4 red tiles in a row? Kang Xiao felt that the pain was such that he would lose consciousness just a little bit. Further ahead were red, blue, and black tiles, and since before that all the time were red, this time the hero decided to choose the blue one. Gritting his teeth, he charged forward. As Kang Sol passed the test, the audience watching him was amused. In the background, their blue comment signs appeared, where they wrote that it was fun to watch, or what a pity that the blue one was wrong despite the unseen audience playing with him. The guy was determined. He knew that if he made a mistake even once, he would be crushed and die. Kang Sol frowned. Signs with other people's comments continued to appear on the screen, saying that he was defeated because it was still too far to go. The tiles stretched forward and the end of the corridor couldn't be seen. Some of the spectators advised him to just run as fast as he could because if he didn't hurry, he would turn into a flat cake. The boy lunged forward. Unexpectedly for everyone, it started to work out. He started to step properly on the flagstones and the trap stopped activating. The audience didn't understand what was going on. Had he guessed? Kang Sol moved on with a confident smile on his hands. The analysis was completed. The correct sequence of tiles is repeated and consists of 5 pieces. When you understand the pattern, the whole trap becomes useless. Kang Sol guessed as he finally made it out of the ill-fated corridor. Those watching him were startled. They wanted him to play with them a little longer. Some of them, however, were unhappy, calling the trap developer lazy and not understanding how it was possible to come up with something so simple. Kang Sol tried to catch his breath, catching his breath. As soon as he left the corridor, another sign appeared in front of him. It said that he had passed the second trial of Ruins of the Forgotten Moon, and he could choose the reward this time as well. It was a silver chest from the last challenge that had improved due to the trap activated less than 10 times. The chest is now gold. Once again, he was given a choice, go ahead or pick up the reward he earned. A huge golden chest appeared in front of Kang Sol. He stared intently at the reward in front of him, trembling slightly. He could take the reward and finish this adventure. Clenching his hand tightly into a fist, he realized that it wasn't the time to stop yet and decided to continue the adventure, leaving the trunk behind. The viewers watching him were indignant at this choice, not understanding how he could want to continue playing when he had earned so many bruises on the previous trap. Kang Sol looked up, gripping the weapon tightly in his hands. He found himself in front of another huge door. There were several tablets on the stone door that had a cipher written on them in a language he didn't recognize. Behind this door was the moon square. He was sure who was behind the door. The warnings told him to not be arrogant, know his place, and humble. The sign that appeared offered 2 possible answers. 1. Ignore the warning and test your strength. 2. Admit your weakness and retreat. Kang Sol reached out to the floating table. He already knew which option he would choose. He would never have chosen the latter. After deciding on the option, Kang Sol pressed the number he needed. A bright light spilled out from under his hand, and the table disappeared. After his choice, the doors opened of their own accord. A bright, blue light shone from inside. The stone gate swung open. Kang Sol looked up and was surprised. The first thing he saw was a huge sword. A knight appeared in front of him, dropping to one knee. With his other free hand, he was leaning on a huge sword. The watching audience members were asking if his ordeal would involve this guy. The stranger's eyes lit up with a bright light, peeking out from under his protective helmet. A voice suddenly rang out, speaking directly to the guy. The knight held out his sword, pointing it at him. Arrogant, how dare he enter here? The knight took up a stance, ready to attack Kang Sol. He was ready to take his head. Kang Sol frowned a little, smiling nervously. He knew who was in front of him. He just thought ironically about how long it had been since they'd met. Moon Knight by Karan. The knight wrapped both hands around the sword. The dice were thrown. The man howled in frustration about what was wrong with his opponent and how to defeat him. The man was leaning on a chair, his head in his hands, lamenting. He said he was tired because it was supposed to be just training. They were told that the game would just have to roll the dice and have fun, so why was this challenge so difficult? Kang Sol sat at the player's table, lost in thought. In his right hand, he held floating faceted bones. In front of him on the table was the image of a knight pointing in his direction. No matter how many attempts they made, they always lost to this monster. Dance of the Moonlit Night is a challenge that appears at the end of Ruins of the Forgotten Moon. Its venue is Lunea Ploshchad. There is a safe zone where it will not attack. Behind the knight was a circle with the word safe written on top. However, there wasn't much hope of getting there. Kang Sol dodged the knight's attacks as the knight continuously threw punches one after another. If a single attack hits, the moonlight will turn you to ashes. A terrible challenge in which the boss is so strong that it can kill with a single blow. The knight returned to his original stance, raising his sword in front of him. Many pieces were lost by those who rushed in and thought they would win easily. In front of Kang Sol, there was a sign with 5 possible answers. The same tiles with animal faces appeared again, but the main difference was that they were in different colors. He could 1 step on a tile with a black sheep, 2 step on a tile with a black wolf, 3 step on a tile with a black moon, 4 step on a tile with a black lion, and 5 step on a tile with a red sheep. These tiles are the only way to pass the test. Kang Sol was a little puzzled as he looked at the possible answers. As far as he could remember, color and order were once again important to the sweep. The order remains from the first test, where you had to click on the tile with the face of an animal in the correct order. It will be the same until he gets out of the ruins. He tried to figure out what order to step on the tiles, while at the same time dodging the attacks of the knight who had swooped down on him. Kang Sol managed to dodge in time, stepping on the first tile, the red lion. Different colors had different effects. The knight in front of him stretched out his hand and clenched it tightly into a fist. The red tiles reduced the aura that surrounded Karuna. His movements slowed down and the barrier became weaker. Kang Sol gritted his teeth as he considered his next move. He chose the red wolf as the next tile, then the red moon. The knight became much slower. Kang Sol was already able to dodge safely without much difficulty. The effect of red tiles was summed up to 3 times. The next tile was a black sheep. While dodging the attacks, Kang Sol quickly clicked on the option he needed. At the same time, a fireball flew at the knight. The black tiles activated a device that dealt damage to Karuna. The fireball hit the knight. However, using it charged up the moon barrier, so you'd have to step on the red tiles again to weaken it. The knight staggered a little, clutching his side. It was necessary to drop the barrier with red and then attack with black, but Kang Sol knew that he would not be defeated quickly anyway. The knight recovered, once again assuming an attacking stance. He turned to Kang Sol, mistaking him for an intruder. He told him that he had prepared some sneaky tricks. Kang Sol stiffened slightly as he looked at his stance. He knew what it meant. It was an instant death attack, Moonlight Slash. The knight swung his sword around, leaving a bright light behind. A strong wave descended from his punch. The audience was indignant as they watched. Comments were posted that it didn't feel like a beginner's test at all. It was too complicated. However, some, on the contrary, wrote that no one forced him to go further, offering to take the award a couple of times. It's your own fault. Kang Sol, however, was able to dodge the knight's powerful strike. The audience was surprised that he managed to survive. In the wiki, it was written that after such an attack, it was impossible to survive. People were making their guesses as Kang Sol stood on the blue slab. The defense is triggered when you step on it. People were surprised when they commented that this is the first person to pass the final test. Kang Sol kept bouncing on the right tiles, avoiding another round of punches. The knight was furious as he spoke to him. He said that an arrogant person should be punished. With that, he ran at the guy with a sword at the ready. Kang Sol stepped on the red one again to loosen the barrier. The knight continued to advance fiercely, preparing to deliver a crushing blow. He raised the sword high above his head. Kang Sol grinned in satisfaction. He recalled an old situation. He was approached and asked if there was any reason why he went so far. Kang Sol was sitting at the gaming table, leaning on his hand and looking in the direction of the source of the voice. A die fell out of his hand. The voice continued, what he was doing is about trying to pass Karuna's Dance of the Moonlit Night. As it turned out, the voice belonged to a red-haired man wearing a lightning mask. He walked over to the table, standing next to it, and went on to say that they were very surprised when they realized that the 3 red tiles of the night can be slowed down as much as possible, so they found the best strategy. Avoid, not win. The black tile does almost no damage, but also activates its deadly attack. Kang Sol stared at him intently as he continued to listen. He was talking about how it was too dangerous and what was the point if their figures died. Kang Sol opened his mouth slightly as he answered the man. Returning to the present, the knight was hit hard by a fireball that landed in his back. Kang Sol retreated slightly. This was the only correct way. The helmet on the knight's head broke. There were pieces on the ground, scattered everywhere. He clenched his teeth tightly, blood dripping from his temple. Clouds of smoke were coming from him, and his eyes were burning with a bright blue light. The man gripped the hilt of his sword tightly. The moon shone down from above. The knight pointed his sword at Kang Sol, telling him not to underestimate the moonlight. Kang Sol jumped to the next red tile, and the knight was hit again. The knight was furious. He clenched his teeth tightly as he glared at the boy in front of him. He was about to charge forward. Kang Sol guessed the right moment and immediately jumped to the black tile. The enemy's armor began to crumble even more, and this time the blow landed on his shoulder. There wasn't much left. Kang Sol took a stance and took a step back. The knight asked him if he really needed to go that far. A sign appeared next, stating that Karin's Moon Knight is now absorbed by the moonlight and will take permanent damage. His agility has increased by 10% and will increase every 5 seconds until he is defeated. If it wasn't for his deadly attack, then the knight wouldn't be so infamous. The knight charged straight at Kang Sol with a shout. New moon steps. A different pattern. He was getting relentlessly fast. Kang Sol barely managed to dodge it, but he could slow it down if he stepped on a red tile and blocked the attack with a blue tile. A golden dome formed on top of Kang Sol, protecting him from the attacks. He was already ready to finish with it. The knight, puffing smoke from his mouth, was ready to continue, repeating the same words, "Be humble." This was Karuna's last attack. He swung his sword in front of the boy as the latter kept trying to avoid the tip of the blade. He used Moonlight Slash again. If Kang Sol couldn't dodge, he would definitely die. The guy kept in mind that you need to continue using the sequence and deal damage. Kang Sol chuckled. A bright moon shone in the sky above. Under its light, two men were fighting in the center of the hall. Moonlit Night Dance was an appropriate title. Kang Sol continued to attack the opponent, tapping on the right tiles with a quick step. The knight raised his sword above his head and swung it. He spoke to Kang Salem, who was standing in front of him, saying that his master. And before he could finish his sentence, another projectile flew at him, hitting the knight directly. Such a powerful blow completely blew off his helmet, revealing his face and light blue hair. He was breathing heavily. His ears were pointed like an elf's. He was trying to finish what he had said before. The knight was already talking to himself about not being able to finish his mission. Asking Nasapledok for forgiveness from his master, a decisive blow flew at him. It hit him squarely in the chest, knocking him completely off his feet. The knight lost. He collapsed to the ground, dropping his sword beside him, a huge gash on his chest. A notification flashed that he was able to pass the last test of the Ruins of the Forgotten Moon. He could choose the reward again. Karuna was defeated and a chest appeared in front of him. The chest improved and became lunar. Kang Sol received the achievements Moon Hunter and the one who knocked down the moon. He couldn't believe that he had actually defeated him. He recalled the conversation with the god in the lightning mask when the latter had asked him why he had tried to defeat Karuna instead of avoiding him. Why go so far? Frowning, Kang Sol told the man that it wasn't the best choice to go around him. He realized that the best option was to win, especially now. Kang Sol extended his hand towards the knight on the ground, a smile spreading across his lips. There was a special reason for this method. He ordered him to stand up and serve him. Black shadows enveloped the knight's body from all directions. Kang Sol used Summon Shadows. The shadow of the Moon Knight Karuna was successfully summoned, but some effects were applied to the summoned opponent. Karuna's shadow couldn't copy Moonlight Slash, and the rank of the summoned shadow was too low. His Moonlight Slash technique has degraded to Full Moon Slash. Kang Sol's high wisdom score was taken into account. The shadow has inherited up to 20% of its original power. The knight rose up, dressed in light clothing. His hair had turned a dark black, and his hair had taken on a purple hue. His face was expressionless, his body shrouded in shadows. The screen with the comments of the watchers lit up. Someone wrote about how Kang Sol didn't exactly look like a rookie and why the knight turned dark. Another noted that this is obviously due to the fact that he was called up. The knight standing in front of him looked indifferent. Instead of his previous armor, he was wearing a dark robe. At the bottom of the knight, his original attributes were displayed. Kang Sol walked over to him with a smile, leaning down slightly on his knees. He was happy with the result. Even though its abilities were still at 20% of its original strength, it was still a hero-class summon. Luck was on the side of the guy, because usually a rare class fell out. To some extent, he guaranteed his own survival. Kang Sol glanced back at the moon chest. Shadow Summon is one of the summon options with very pleasant conditions. It is enough to defeat the enemy who has a shadow, and the shadow's skills will be similar to those of the defeated monster. Kang Sol opened the chest, checking the reward he had received. He leveled up several times, earned stat points, received weapons in the form of the Moonlight Sword, Full Moon Staff, Moon Seed, more than 200 coins, 13 medium red potions, and 7 small blue potions. Next to Kang Sol, the character's current stats board flashed up, changing the title to The One Who Defeated the Moon, level 3, and adding a few unused stats points. In the world of Eternity, when you level up, you get 4 fixed stat points and 4 selective ones. Fixed rates are added depending on the profession. Kang Sol decided to add the rest of the points to Wisdom as well. Shadow Summoner was supposed to increase it. In addition to his points, he was given another useful item, the Moonlight Sword, which drops out for defeating Karuna. An item's nameplate appeared at the bottom, indicating its characteristics. Kang Sol decided to give it to the summoned knight, handing the sword to him. A notification flashed that Karin's Moon Knight had equipped the Moonlight Sword. The knight took the proffered sword. Shadows of the Shadow Summoner have their own characteristics, are leveled up independently, and can change equipment. Other types of summoned creatures draw power from their host, while shadows require individual investment. The knight raised his sword, looking at the blade in front of him. It was much more effective when viewed in the long run. Kang Sol picked up the staff. He got the wisdom staff that he wanted so badly. Unlike the original stick, the staff looked impressive, with a circle of blue light burning on top of it. The audience, however, felt that wisdom was the most useless characteristic and expected Kang Sol to change his mind. A sign with the staff's characteristics popped up from the bottom. In Kang Sol's opinion, although wisdom was usually considered a useless attribute, it was the most important one for a shadow summoner. It affects the loyalty of the summoned, charisma, skill improvement, chance of successful shadow summoning, and enlightenment. This was especially important for Kang Sol because he is going to become an elite summoner. There was also an item that he hadn't expected to get. Kang Sol's hand was tightly gripping a moon seed. The usual sign with a description of the item appeared at the bottom. It definitely needed to be eaten, but Kang Sol knew a method that would definitely increase its effectiveness. He also received a title. Kang Sol tapped with his index finger, opening the title descriptions. In the description, it was said that attacks using the moon attribute were increased by 5%, and the effect affected all summoned creatures. The special effect was questionable in Kang Sol's opinion, but it would work in principle. If this works for Karuna, then it will increase his current stats. Kang Sol stood in a circle, and Karuna stood to his left. Golden light surrounded them. Kang Sol finished checking, and so far, everything seemed to be fine. Looking back, the guy decided to move on. They were transported to the next adventure. A giant door opened in front of them. It was flanked by giant pillars. This was the second adventure, called 5 Rainbow Brothers. In the southern Rocky Mountains of Pandia live tribes of hideous trolls. One of them, the Stone Fang tribe, chooses its leader in a special way, and in the same special way supports life. Now their leader is Tyrant Jamad, a huge ogre with fangs sticking out of its jaw, long gray hair, and a huge scar running all the way down its face. Their priority was to weaken the Stone Fang tribe in their favorite ways. Break a pawn on the chessboard. Objective: kill at least one Stone Fang tribe leader. It will die if it doesn't reach the target. For everything about everything, they were given 20/47 on the timer. The boys dashed forward across the sunlit grass. Above their heads, the sky was a clear blue. Kang Sol smiled. If it was noon now, he would reach the safe zone by tomorrow morning. With the exception of some special cases, they will be given a rest every 2 adventures. Before his eyes were high mountains with covered peaks. The current adventure is about 5 brothers. Kang Sol reasoned there were a lot of options, as he has 5 goals to choose from. It was a bit of an adventure, though. The Rocky Mountains weren't very high, but the terrain was still difficult to traverse, and there should be security. It will take some time. Kang Sol looked around. He decided that therefore, based on the difficulty, the adventure was designed for a group of 5 people. But why was he alone? Kang Sol was a little apprehensive. There wasn't much time, so we had to start moving as quickly as possible. Speaking of the time limit, last time he was given exactly 6 hours, and here is such a strange timer. Why such an even number? It turned out that several of the band members were already dead people. Red plaques with the names of players who had fallen during the game appeared here and there in front of Kang Sol's eyes. All the other band members died. Viewers started writing their own surprised comments about how they couldn't figure out what to do in such a situation, and Kang Sol didn't have any hope. He's definitely going to die. A huge village opened up in front of him. In the distance, there were many houses with colored roofs standing in the center of the forest. Trees with huge crowns grew around the houses, covering all the free space around. The sky was blue, almost without a single cloud in the sky. A guard sang at the border of the mountains. Flags fluttered near the observation towers. Green flag, slightly torn at the bottom. It had a red sign painted on it, and there was a black stripe on the bottom of the flag. Not far from them were sharp wooden peaks. Kang Sol was hiding, carefully peeking out from behind the cover so that no one would notice him. His brow was furrowed and his mouth was set in a thin line. He was watching the situation from his hiding place. When he saw the green flag, he noted that the Stone Fang tribe only used it on special occasions, when they want to ask for the blessing of the Earth Dragon Tangrid at the Harvest Festival. Ahead of him, he saw a huge ogre leaning against a wooden structure, and behind it, another one just like him was lying. There was smoke everywhere. Weapons, huge axes and axes lay on the ground. This place was the lowest level of the Stone Fang domain. Kang Sol crouched down on one knee, his brow furrowed. He saw the corpses of people strung on pikes. He realized that all of his teammates had died in battle. Kang Sol looked at the people hanging on the peaks. 4 corpses hung from sharp stakes, and crows circled above them. Their arms hung limply. Some of them were bleeding from under their helmets. There were a couple of girls and boys among them. Judging by their clothes, one of them was a priest. Then 2 vanguards and an archer. Kang Sol thought about it. He thought that this would be a good combination. With the proper knowledge, they could have made it through this adventure, but unfortunately it ended in a huge tragedy for all of them. One could use many options to attack. Kang Sol gripped the handle of his wand, trying to calm himself. It was useless to think about it anyway. He moved a short distance away from the shelter, crouching on one knee. There's no point crying about spilled milk. He realized that he was all alone. Pressing a hand to his chin, Kang Sol looked up to the side. He needed to develop a strategy that would help him deal with this situation. But the conditions greatly narrowed the choice. Kang Sol cupped his chin as he thought about his special method of fighting. A familiar golden sign appeared in front of him with a description of the quest and answer options, which read, "He has arrived in the village, and what will he do?" In total, 3 possible answers were given, of which there were 1. Attack the houses in order, starting with the neighbors. The next, 2. Wait for the night, and the last, 3. Look around and collect information. The guy thought about it. The timer was already showing him 39 minutes to go. He had already spent a bit of the time given to him. He would have to go through this adventure alone, but the only consolation was that he would definitely get the best reward. The world of eternity has always reacted differently to the actions of people and adventures. The image he had seen when he first came here flashed through his mind, the castle perched high on the mountain and the huge pillar behind it, pierced by light. In other words, the behavior of shapes can affect the world. Kang Sol came up with an idea for a special method that he could use. And if this special method that the hero thought of works, then he will write a new story. A dense forest, with thick-leaved trees towering in the middle. The entire forest was surrounded by green wild bushes. Kang Sol looked deep into the forest in front of him as he continued on his way. He took a liking, leaning on one knee and trying to stick to the bushes. The first option was to attack the houses in order, starting with the close ones. There was no need to explain how dangerous it was. A crowd of armed ogres that were twice their size rushing at them, with vicious faces and bats, axes in their hands ready to tear them apart, and only a knight with a sword in his hand standing in front of them. This will be dangerous even with Karina around, so this option immediately failed. The second option was to wait until nightfall. A night raid might have worked, but now that his team was dead, it wasn't worth doing anything when you were alone. So Kang Sol decided to go with the third option, namely, to look around and gather information. First of all, he was interested in the outcast of the Rocky Mountains. The man looked at the mountains in front of him. There were a total of 5 peaks in these mountains. At the highest level is the Stone Fang tribe. Other peaks are occupied by other creatures, but that didn't mean their enemies were in a good position. It's just that the tops were occupied by different supporting characters, a faceted cube thrown between the surrounding peaks. This played an important role in the adventure of the 5 brothers. Kang Sol peeked out from under the tree, looking for someone nearby. He thought that first he had to find the hidden key of this adventure, the exile. It was said that he was hiding at the foot of the lowest peak. He lives here because he was exiled from the tribe. He was sure that he was already close by. Ahead of him, he saw a string of bells strung together. They were tied to the base of the trees. It was a pre-arranged trap. The bells were small, but the sound was quite loud. A spell was cast on them to warn them of the intruder. The guy examined them carefully. The exile was already close. Suddenly, he heard a voice speaking to him. Someone in the bushes called out to him, calling him a man and asking him who he was. Distracted by the call, he immediately fell into a trap, caught on a rope with bells. Someone was startled, immediately ordering him not to approach, and Kang Sol stopped, assuring him that he wasn't dangerous. A green hand peeked out of the bushes. It was the ogre, the exiled one. It took him a while to show his full body, but you could see that fangs were sticking out of his mouth like normal ogres. He asked if the man was human. Kang Sol wondered where he was hiding. Noticing a hut not far away, firewood was lying next to it and there was a rack with fish. Just as he was about to take a step, a voice from the bushes again ordered him not to approach. Kang Sol tried to convince him that he didn't have any evil intentions. However, the ogre didn't believe him, shouting that he was a liar and he was probably sent by the Stone Fang tribe. He was asking what Kang Sol was doing here. A sign flashed up, describing the task. The rogue was afraid of him and he needed to do something about it. He was given 3 options, there were 5 of them in total. 1. Intimidate. 2. Which required persuasion. 1. Justify yourself and say that you were lost. 3. Ask for help in exterminating the Stone Fang tribe. 4. Which required the profession of a sorcerer. Ask for training in witchcraft. And 5. Which required perception. 1. Which is to try to talk to him about how to kill the Stone Fang tribe. That there was something wrong with him. Kang Sol carefully considered the options. He turned to him and asked why he didn't fit, if there was any problem. The ogre, who was hostile, shouted at him to stay away from him. He looked towards the bushes where the voice was coming from. Kang Sol asked the ogre if he was ill. The ogre twitched. Kang Sol already knew about this, but decided it was better to communicate as if he didn't know anything. Ogo came out of the bushes. He was tall and huge, dressed in a black hoodie. There were spots all over his body. He showed them to Kang Sol while pointing at them. These were wounds that were caused by his illness, and it was contagious, so it was best not to approach him. Narrowing his eyes, the ogre added that the boy shouldn't force him to show the rest. A sign with a description appeared in front of Kang Sol's eyes. The outcast was sick, what would he do? As usual, several options were given. Kang Sol took a close look at them. 1. Move away. 2. Scold him. 3. Which required detoxification. 1. Ask if it was caused by poison. And 4. Which required medicine. 1. Tell him that he wanted to examine. Kang Sol said that he would like to hear more details, and that's what he came here for. The ogre didn't believe what the guy told him, saying that he was crazy because if he approached him, he would get infected. Kang Sol replied that it was difficult to communicate over a long distance. The ogre was slightly taken aback. He didn't understand why Kang Sol was doing this. The ogre asked him what he wanted to hear. Kang Sol held out his hand and said that he wanted to hear everything. Anything he wants to tell you. The ogre considered. The rogue relaxed his guard a little. He told him that it would be better if they continued to talk inside, if he really wanted to go after him, but immediately added that he would not be responsible for the consequences. Kang Sol smiled slightly as he looked in the ogre's direction. He agreed. Kang Sol followed, looking at the other's back. The onlookers started yelling at him not to follow him, not understanding why he was going there. The ogre lived in a small house with a thatched roof. Not far from it was a small tree stump. They went inside. There were bags of supplies everywhere, firewood and berries, and various herbs. There were stacks of books on the floor, scattered carelessly. Kang Sol looked around, surprised by the books, and pointed them out to the ogre. The ogre himself ironically asked that this was quite surprising on the ogre's part. Kang Sol, on the other hand, said that he wasn't particularly surprised. The ogre offered him tea, giving him a choice of herbal tea, although he honestly admitted that it didn't taste very good. They sat across from each other, sitting on the floor. The ogre took off his cape. Kang Sol replied that he would like some tea, but he wanted to hear his story first. The ogre, with a slight stutter, held out his hand and replied that in this case he would tell a little about himself. The guy agreed, still listening patiently. The ogre began by saying that there wasn't much to tell. The Rocky Mountains have been hit by an endemic disease in the past. This continued for several generations, and many died. The ogre thought of his old clansmen who had been killed by the disease. Therefore, the people of the Stone Fang tribe established one rule to get rid of the disease: exile. An infected person leaving the tribe and armed ogres standing behind him. The sick were simply expelled. Kang Sol asked if this also applied to the ogre. He said no. It was about his mother. She was pregnant when she became infected. A woman with a bag on her back was walking deeper into the forest. She begged to be kept in the tribe, but it didn't work. The ancestors decided that a child could spread the disease. Wrapped in a red robe, the drooping woman continued to walk into the distance. The ogre continued. Even though they didn't know the truth at the time, the child was actually born with the disease. He clenched his hand into a fist. She held a grudge against them until her death. I wanted it all to disappear. Kang Sol asked what exactly he meant by that. The ogre replied, the Stone Fang tribe, the disease, and him. The ogre lowered his dark gaze. The hero asked if his illness was incurable. Keeping his head down, the ogre continued that he had read so many books just to find out. He used witchcraft to learn the human language. He also learned about endemic diseases in order to understand what he suffers from. He went on to say that the pain was curable, but only if there were the right ingredients. The medicine needed was the corpse finger mushroom that can be found in these mountains, but he couldn't find it. He added that the problem was in his bones. The more the disease progresses, the more it affects them. Right now, he couldn't even get up there, so much had the disease consumed his body. Kang Sol looked at the other man and said that he was willing to go in his place. The ogre was surprised, not immediately believing his ears. He asked again, asking why he needed it. Kang Sol smiled softly. The question of the Stone Fang tribe, trolls, leaders, and the issues that connect them all. Closing his eyes, the boy continued to smile. He was able to put together the best story and save this troll. Kang Sol concluded with a smile that they could make a small deal. A sign with the title of the hidden adventure abandoned. The beginning was displayed.